Hi guys, welcome back to We Should Talk, a pop culture interview series from In the Know. I'm your host, Gibson Johns, and this week on the podcast we have Batsheva Haart from My Unorthodox Life on Netflix. Bat is one of the daughters of Julia Haart, who the show centers around, and they were a family who lived in the ultra-Orthodox community in Muncie, New York. But Julia left the community and her children followed thereafter. And Julia has since had this skyrocketing career in fashion, and her kids have sort of followed suit with their various interests. But Batsheva is a bona fide social media star in her own right. She has over 1 million TikTok followers. She's big on Instagram, and she really loves fashion like her mom. So she really is kind of following her footsteps in a certain way. But I loved having her on the podcast, and I loved talking to her all about the show, because the show has really been a conversation starter in a lot of ways. It received a lot of positive feedback for its kind of more nuanced representation of Jewish people, and because I think, historically in media, the representation for Jewish communities were either ultra Orthodox or super secular, and there wasn't really much in between, and they definitely represent sort of that in between. And within their family, there is a spectrum of belief and what have you. So it was really interesting to hear about that, and then also her reaction to the criticism of the show. I think a lot of people also think that the show sort of oversimplifies what Orthodox Judaism is. It kind of, across the board equated Orthodox Judaism with fundamentalism, which I don't really know if it did, but some people think that it did. She had some great responses to that feedback. And then we also talked about more kind of detailed things about her relationship with her husband, Ben, who she's been married to for 8 or 9 years at this point. They got married when they were 19. Also her love of fashion, kind of just getting used to filming in front of the cameras, and just various issues that if you watch the show, you'll care about. And then I wanted to end on something fun, because I read a bunch of interviews of hers researching for this interview, and she said she was a huge Bravo fan, which obviously avid listeners of this podcast will love to hear. So I asked her for her thoughts on Real Housewives of New York and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Spoiler alert, she stopped watching New York this season, which I've heard of some other people doing as well. Anyway, keep listening for an interview with Batsheva Haart from My Unorthodox Life on Netflix. Stream My Unorthodox Life on Netflix. All episodes are available now. And please rate, review, and subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so we're here with Batsheva Haart from My Unorthodox Life. Thanks for being here. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah. So you must have had a crazy last month of your life. It must just be a wild experience for you to, the show's been out for a month, and I think, we all know that Netflix is this huge platform and everyone has Netflix and watches Netflix, but I feel like being in it and being on a show and seeing the reaction to it must just make you realize how actually huge the power of Netflix is.
Yeah, Netflix is a global, worldwide platform. So I think it's totally different than any other platform that's out there, because you see yourself in other languages. People from different countries are tagging me, and I'm seeing the subtitles or hearing different voiceovers on top. So it's really cool to be able to be on this kind of platform.
Mm-hmm. And how are you doing now that the show has been out for a month? I'm sure you're dealing with positive, negative, a ton of different reaction across the board. How has it been for you?
Thank God it's been really good. It's really been majority positive. We're very lucky. So it's just been slightly different in terms of being recognized, and in that sense, knowing all these people know so much about you is different, a different kind of experience, just because even though I've been on social media, I've always kept it pretty not as personal as obviously we share on the show. So it's a different experience.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because I feel like, having so many more fans and followers and people with eyes on you, it must sort of empower you to feel like you can share more of your life and now that you have opened up really about this whole journey that you've been on. Do you feel like you can be more open with your followers? And I'm assuming also to begin with, you have a lot more followers because of the show now.
Yeah, thank God my following has really grown, especially since I do content creation as my full-time job. It's been really nice to see that jump. I still think I'm going to go about sharing the same way I've always shared, just because I feel like sharing on a show versus sharing on this platform, people can only get to me through going to my messages. If I share a story, then I feel it's much I'm giving people that opportunity to give me all their opinions like so easily, as opposed to sharing on a show. So I feel like how I share on my regular like social media is kind of like the level that I feel comfortable with opening up. And I feel like you get like a nice mix of everything.
That's nice that you feel so kind of secure in what your sort of brand identity is and what exactly you are kind of willing to put out there. But like, I guess conversely, like, because you do have this sort of now elevated platform and you have more people watching you, do you feel like the kind of inbound messages, comments have changed? Have the nature of those things changed for you and what people are saying to you?
Not really. It's just a larger volume, or people, messaging me things about my relationship, which I guess like they never would have messaged me because they would only see like Ben on a picture here and there.
Yeah.
So I guess like maybe more personal messages, but like pretty much the same kind of feedback.
So I saw a article that referred to you and your family, as the kosher Kardashians, which I thought was like, it made me laugh. And I think that there's an element there, because I think, we can get into sort of like the religious aspect of the show and that whole journey of your family. But I think like part of the reason why, it appealed to me, which is I think part of the reason why a lot of reality TV appeals to people, is sort of the aspirational lifestyle that you guys live. And, you have these beautiful apartments and you're flying in helicopters at the Hamptons. But I think to me, the most important thing for you guys is the fashion of it all. Like we see your mom's amazing closet, and you guys, you're pulling things out of her closet. Obviously your careers are all completely intertwined with fashion. And I also think that it must be it's very symbolic and representative of the journeys that you guys have been on too, as people and with religion. I would just love to hear more about sort of like your evolving relationship with fashion over the years, because I know that I think you went to like hairstyling school. You were a hairstylist for a little bit, and so that's sort of like how you were into like the beauty world. But talk to me about fashion specifically and sort of how that relationship for you has sort of evolved over the years.
Yeah, so I think my mom was always into dressing well. Obviously, like where we came from, she stuck to all the guidelines. But she always like enjoyed that aspect of life. And I definitely got that from her. Like Miriam, my sister, was never into getting dressed, like only in like the past year or two was like interested in anything. So I always like, for me, like I feel better when I put on an outfit or do my makeup, just like boost my mood, my personality and everything. But my evolution definitely, I feel like I saw the biggest shift like when I started doing social media and I was looking at what people are wearing, and like there's inspiration everywhere, which is really amazing. So it's interesting, like when I scroll back to like my first early posting days, where my like style is now to where it was, regardless of like the modesty aspect. It's really changed. But
what do those early posts look like? What do those early posts look like? I haven't scrolled all the way back.
Yeah, you got to scroll. Just like kind of basic, a top and a bottom, like no real thought into it. To me, that was me like putting on an outfit. I still felt great about it, but looking back, I don't think I ever like tested any limits. And I feel like now I will dress trendy versus style. Like my husband always says there's like fashion and there's style. So like I was maybe more stylish, not really into fashion and trying new trends that were going on. And now I'm like okay with testing the limit and trying something new, which I think a lot of people are scared of doing because you're getting out of your comfort zone. But I've become much more confident and like, let me try this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least I feel good.
Totally. And you mentioned your mom as this obviously this is the world that she's in as well, and she probably it's a little bit of a lead by example thing where it's like, oh, my mom's into that, like I want to see what it's like. She must be, I mean, we see it on the show, but I feel like she must also just be so proud of you in terms of just the thing that you've built for yourself. And what kind of advice have you gotten from her about, I mean, we saw a little bit of like a business interaction with you guys on the show with like the yoga brand that reached out, but what kind of pieces of advice has she given you? Because she's so successful and she knows what she's doing. So what have you learned from your mom about just sort of building out your brand or the world of fashion in general?
Well, I would say the world of fashion is to not be afraid of color.
Mm,
My mom loves color and prints, and I think that a lot of people are afraid of that. It's much easier to dress in all black, and you look
hmm.
great. But to bring that into your wardrobe, and in terms of business, I think like the biggest life lesson my mom has taught me, and that is to have your own business or to have your own skill. You don't have to be the CEO of a company, but to have something as a woman for yourself that you can make your own money. I think she's led by example, obviously, and encouraged me to do that for myself. And I think that's like the most valuable thing, one of the most valuable things that she's taught me, because so many people, don't value that. And I'm not a mom right now, so I don't know for sure, but I know from
Right.
people, I think for my mom, all of us were growing up, and then she was super young. She was in her 40s, and she's like, now what? And I
Hmm.
think to have something for yourself, even while your kids are growing up, it doesn't need to be a full-time thing, just like a hobby or something you can maybe turn into a way to make money after your kids don't need you, I think is so valuable.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. And I think what also must make it fun for you too is that like your husband is also really into fashion, and he's building out his own kind of like niche there. And does that add to sort of the fun that you can have in this world that you're in?
So I have nothing to do with his style or any of his clothing at all. It is
Wow,
all
it's all
him.
him. Good. He
It's
dresses
all
very
him.
well, but like
He
it's
dresses really
very, yeah,
well. I would say, like, knows more about like what's going on in the fashion world than I do in the men's fashion
interesting.
world. But like,
Right.
he is always like up to date. He knows the new brands, everything that's coming out. Um, it's funny because like we have like, a lot of times like men complain that they have like no closet space. Like our closet is like equally divided. Like he has the same amount of clothing as I do.
I love to hear
So in a New York
that.
City, yeah, in a New York City apartment, it's challenging. We live in a 1 bedroom loft, and we made the bedroom our closet, and we made the loft top our tiny little bedroom because that's what we value,
Priorities, baby, priorities.
Yep. So it's a lot of fun.
That's so fun. I think it was interesting. I watched a couple of interviews of yours before to get ready for this, and it was interesting because I didn't hear this on the show, but you had said that Ben was actually the kind of the person that pushed you to kind of reconnect with your mom in that period when you guys were not really talking, and then you were kind of struggling with your relationship there. To me, that was interesting to hear, because it kind of is unexpected. I know that you guys all value family so well, and he values family just as much as you guys do. But can you talk to me a little bit about just like some of the conversations that you guys had around that time, and how Ben either pushed you into having a better place to be in a better place with your mom, or just reconnecting with her?
I think for him, he always said, it's your mom, not my mom. So he
Hmm.
always felt like he understood what I was going through, but he knew that it wasn't painful to him because
Yeah.
it wasn't his mom. So he was able to have like a much clear mindset and to like break it down better than I was, because I was blinded by pain and anger, and he was able to see it for what it was, like someone
Hmm.
who was really unhappy changing their life. He obviously understood why I was struggling, but he knew that, I think he knew that deep down I didn't want to be in this place. Nobody wants to feel anger towards a family member. Like you have to
Absolutely.
carry that yourself. Um, so I think it was just like him constantly encouraging me to be nice, to talk, to hear her out, to a point where I was finally, I think, mature enough to be ready to have the conversation with her. I
Hmm.
think for a while I just didn't care, and I was angry. I wasn't willing to listen. So I think I had to go through that process myself. It's all good. Process myself to get to the point where I was ready to listen. And once I had like the conversation with her, I understood. And I'm obviously very thankful to her for the journey that she went on, because my life has been drastically improved by the changes
Yeah.
that she made. And I think it took me just getting old enough to understand that your parents are people also. And I think
Hmm.
that a lot of kids don't view their parents as like a person who has feelings. They're just like your mom or your dad. um, so I think it like just took me to the point where I needed where I was ready to listen.
Totally. And I think that to me is really indicative of how great of a relationship that you and Ben have, actually, and how like you make really good partners for each other because you both push each other. And obviously there's a lot of push and pull, especially in your situation, because of, you know, the community that you left and the community that you're joining, and sort of just like the everything that goes with that complicates that transition. I think that we saw on the show that you push him to be better and he pushes you to be better. And I think that this is just another example of that. So I think it's really cool that you've kind of put a spotlight on that, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I think like it's important to show that like in a relationship, like your part, obviously you need to be your own person and make your own decisions, but to value your partner's opinion also, if you value your relationship, is really important.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, the most indicative moments of that to me are sort of like those early episodes of the show where it's like you come out in the jeans and he's clearly really uncomfortable by that. And you have this conversation about that. Eventually he becomes okay with it. You know, you guys talk about like Miriam's sexuality and sort of your own personal like struggle and understanding that. And then there's obviously a moment backstage at the fashion show where there's sort of like a come to heads of sort of like, you know, just between your family and Ben. And I think that like all those moments coming together and then sort of seeing where you guys end up in the later episodes of the show, like it just feels like you have settled into that, you know, and you solve those problems for yourself. And I just think a lot of people can learn from those moments, you know, and I'm sure you've heard some of that from fans.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely like all those. I've gotten messages like, "Oh, that was a good reality TV drama." I'm like, "No, like these are like actual
This is real,
feelings.
right?
Like I've had this fight with him a million times before. Like that was very authentic." Now, thankfully, he's at the point where I'll wear something and I'll be like, "That's what you're wearing," and I'm like, "Mm-hmm.
And
This is what I'm wearing," and he
question it
doesn't say
beyond
anything.
that. Good. Good. I think that's a great place to be at. And I also feel like I also noticed like visually just like seeing you guys get more comfortable in front of the reality TV cameras too.
Yeah,
I think that was also a big part of it, probably, in terms of just
for
opening up.
sure.
Was there a learning curve for you in terms of opening up? Because obviously you're used to talking on social media, but it's different when it's just cameras following you around or a confessional setting.
Yeah, I think I definitely feel like I had the easiest time getting used to it because I'm so used to always like talking to
Yeah.
myself in my phone or things like that. So I was the most comfortable, but it's definitely, I feel like when people ask me like what was the most challenging thing, and it is like talking about your emotions or having that conversation with my mom. Like I didn't want to bring that stuff back up. But it's, you know, you want to be able to connect with the audience, and I feel like you can't get the full picture of our family if you don't understand where we came from or what we went through to get to this point.
Definitely. And something I'm curious about too is because you obviously you identify as modern Orthodox, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you still celebrate Shabbat, and during that time you don't you turn off your phone and you're not on social media. And as somebody who is professionally a social media influencer, who I'm sure you're on your phone all the time, is that moment every week for you where you're on your phone? Is that like a welcome moment for you to actually unplug, and it forces you to unplug? Because I feel like, you know, a lot of people talk about these days, it's so important to unplug and it's like so much easier said than done. But for you, it's almost like built into your lifestyle and what your kind of weekly schedule is. Like, is that a welcome moment for you to not check Instagram or TikTok?
Yeah, I think it's so nice to be able to have that, as you said, like built in. Like to me, it wasn't like a choice that I made; it was kind of what I was brought up into. But I feel like my mental health is so much better because I do this every single week. I have that one full 25-hour period where I'm not posting on social media. I'm not looking. I'm not thinking like, oh my God, I need to capture this. And I think that's why I love what I do so much, is because I take a break from it every single week, and like a serious break, because I feel like so many people, or people who I've spoken to who used to keep Shabbat and don't, are like, your weeks kind of just like go into the next one. There's never that pause. And I really value that I have that time with my friends and family and with myself.
Yeah, and that's so nice to hear that you also don't like, you don't have like the craving too, because I feel like it's like we all have this craving to like, oh, let me take a picture of that before I eat it, or let me take a picture of this gorgeous sunset, or let me take a picture, whatever. Like it's so nice to hear that like you, even though you're so in it professionally, that you still like mentally can really switch it off and be like, nope, it's okay. Like it's not like an itch that you have every second of the day, you know, which is nice.
Yeah. And it's hard to, and I will every so often do like a 3-day social media cleanse where I like delete the apps from
Oh my
my
God, good for
phone.
you.
And you, again, I realized how like my fingers just like go to Instagram, go to TikTok without me even like, if I'm not busy for a minute, like that's where my fingers are with like subconsciously, like I don't even know
Totally.
how they got there. And
I
then when I
relate to
delete
that.
the app,
Absolutely.
I'm like, where'd it go? What do I like? What's the phone for anyway? Like, I don't speak to people. Like, um, so yeah, so I don't do that so often, but occasionally I
It's
will
good to
try
do
to.
that. Yeah, it is really good to do that. So I think, you know, it's no secret that the reaction to my unorthodox life has been like polarized. So we have like there was there's been a lot of really positive reception, and there's been sort of, I feel like mostly within the religious community, a lot of
Yeah.
negative reception. But I want to talk about the positive first, because I think that what's so important about this show, and I've read a little bit about this in the past couple of weeks since I've watched the show and just to understand it, but you know, but before my unorthodox life, a lot of the representation for Jewish people was kind of on one extreme. It was either like very secular or like ultra orthodox, and it was just like one or the other. And I think what's so great about my unorthodox life is that not only do you guys as a family represent sort of more nuance and another layer to that representation, but like within your family itself, there's such a spectrum of belief and kind of where you are in your transitions, and it's just I think that there's so many more layers that we're seeing to representation. And you know, is that something that you're hearing or reading, or because I think it is really important to note that.
Yeah, that has been like majority of the messages I've received are
Good.
like, it's so nice to see. Like I like people are like, I feel represented. Like I've only, or they don't know, and they're like, we've only seen like secular, like, you know, unaffiliated or ultra religious. Like you've never seen an in between. And a lot of people from other religions relate to it. And that's, I think, like my mom really, she didn't like use Judaism so much. She wanted to like focus on
For
fundamentalism, not
sure.
on like ultra orthodox, because in any religion, whether it's Christian, Catholic, Muslim, like any ultra religious society is going to have that way of treating women or living your life. And this, you kind of see people who, like, you know, we respect our religion, but we also live a modern lifestyle, and we learn
Mm-hmm.
how to balance that. And also to teach people to respect one another, that just because you don't have the same belief system doesn't mean you can't be a happy and close family. You just need to respect and give people the freedom to practice what they want to practice.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I think it's important for you to note too is the kind of the one of the through lines is the roles of women and the treatment of women in some of these communities. And I think that we see just sort of in the various, in the kind of level of breaking out that your mom and Miriam, and then I think eventually you have really done, is like it kind of is indicative of that, and how kind of constrained you were for so long. And you know, specifically when it comes to kind of the roles of women and how you guys were treated in Muncie, what were those conversations like within your family? Because you know, there's also 3 men in your family, and I'm curious if it took you guys kind of like explaining it to them, or kind of talking about it with them to have them really understand sort of kind of the positions that you guys were in.
I think it's about, you know, like I never felt mistreated by my family. I think it was
Right.
more about changing the mindset of what women's roles are.
For sure.
You know, like you don't need to have a baby right away, that you can have a career as well, or you can live your life for a little bit, or not everybody wants to be a mom. So I think it's more having those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like my mom and sister have much more like feministic views on religion,
Absolutely.
and they're
Yeah.
very anti-religion, whereas I still see myself in it, and value certain aspects, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously the parts that I didn't like, you know, are not holding me back anymore. So I feel like it's kind of more about having the conversation about, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I feel I'm supposed to do, but I don't want to do that, or
Mm.
I don't feel that way. And I feel like they understand.
Of course, yeah. I think that's a really nice way of putting it. And obviously, you know, on the flip side, there was there's this kind of this criticism I think from the Orthodox community that it kind of accused the show of just being oversimplistic and equating Orthodox Judaism with fundamentalism when there are more layers to it than that, and there's more of a nuance there. What's your reaction to that criticism? Because I'm sure you even asked about it, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it.
I feel like for that specifically, like this is a 9-episode TV show, and like religion was obviously a focal point of it, but like this wasn't a let's educate you on ultra Orthodox religion. This was a TV show about a family. So my mom and my siblings and I, we were all speaking to our personal experience.
Right.
And there's tons of people who have different experiences, and that's their story to share. So I feel like people should understand that this wasn't like a let's teach you a religion. This was we're sharing our story. This was our experience, and to really hopefully inspire people who are struggling and feel in a similar place in any religion, that there's a way out and that you can still lead a very happy and successful life, or learn to be someone like me who is just less religious, but still has a lot of the same traditions and values.
Definitely. And I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, it's like you said, you've gotten messages with people that identify with this story. It's kind of your stories as proxy for maybe somebody else's, but again, you're not claiming to represent everyone. And I think what I would wonder as like kind of reading some of these articles is like how many people actually watched the show versus just like heard about it or saw the trailer or just saw the title of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that honestly, like I knew that we would get criticism just because like we're saying that the way that people like that live wasn't for us and we didn't like it. So I understand people wanting to, protect their beliefs. But those remarks, I'm like, and that's why I say on like every podcast interview, I'm like, watch the full season.
Right.
We talk about religion, how beautiful it is. We're not trying to convince people not to be religious. It's just the ultra fundamentalist part that is bad.
Yeah.
And people feel stuck. So, totally. And this isn't, and there are for sure people and plenty of people who are living happy, fulfilled lives in that community. And this wasn't against them. This was sharing for the people who are struggling that you can do something else as well. So I think that I really encourage people to watch the full 9 episodes. Don't watch the trailer. There was so much criticism, just a trailer. I'm like, this is Netflix. We're trying to get you to watch the show.
Yeah,
it's working because you're talking about it.
Yeah.
And don't watch the first episode. You gotta really, if you watch all 9 episodes, we celebrate holidays. We talk about Shabbat. There's so much positivity around Judaism.
So much. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, and I think to me, one of the most like touching, beautiful moments was literally the last scene of the show when you guys are having dinner. Your dad's over with who is now his fiance, and it's like it's just this modern family where people can have different beliefs and you can still value each other and come to the dinner table and like have great conversation. And to me, that's the biggest thing that I took from the end of the show is just like I loved seeing, because like I remember when Miriam goes to your dad's house and we kind of see the closed door, and in my mind I was wondering like, oh, is their dad just not going to be on the show because he doesn't agree with it or something? But like, no, he's on the show several times and he brings the new love of his life onto the show, and he's still very. So I think that was a beautiful moment, and I think again, if people get to the end, they'll see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think like that was, and we always say this, like people are always like, you do holidays together, like aren't your parents divorced? And I'm like, yeah, they're amazing and they value their children and their family life over everything else. And like I think my dad understood the importance of him coming on to show like this is literally how my family is. Like we all accept each other. We put our differences and beliefs aside and are just come together as a family.
Totally. Well, I want to end with something fun, because I read in an interview you did that you're a Bravo fan, and I am a Bravo-holic, like top tier. What are you watching on Bravo? Like what do you love watching these days? Because I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Currently watching Beverly Hills. I stopped watching New York. No offense, it was not my season.
It's tough. It's tough.
It was really tough. I'll definitely come back next time to see
Who
how
do you
it's going.
who do you want back? Who do you want back to New York? Who do you want to come back to New York if you have somebody come back?
Definitely like Bethany and I love Dorinda. So I would love, I feel like they need to like start from scratch and like bring in a whole or add to the new additions that they have. I just feel like there's big disconnect in the cast.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. And then Beverly
and it's
Hills.
really small.
Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, I love.
I had Sutton on this week, so you're following Sutton.
I'm excited. I need to listen. I love Sutton. Yeah, I mean, like Beverly Hills is just amazing because you get like the fashion and the lifestyles. Like, but I also love Potomac. I'm a big Potomac fan.
Huge Potomac fan. I'm so glad that you're a Potomac fan. That's
yeah.
So fun.
I feel like it's so underrated. People are like, "Oh, you watch it?" I'm like, it's like one of the best.
I mean, Karen Huger's the queen. I love Karen Huger.
Yes. Exactly. It's amazing.
If fashion wise, like regardless of everything else, which housewife would you kind of compare yourself to? Because I think in Beverly Hills we have two obvious fashion queens, but I think that who would you compare yourself to?
Ooh, I would have to say Dorit, because like I love that she goes all out with like her hair and makeup too. Like it's not just like a look, it's like the everything top to bottom. It's like a moment,
right? Exactly.
It's a moment. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I literally have a birthday card in my fridge that's sorry I was late. I was in glam. Remember last season when she was
like I get that. I really get it. I get it.
I'm sure you do.
It.
Well, this was so fun. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people follow you and follow you on TikTok and watch the show? Do your plugs that you need to do.
Yeah. All right. So if you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all Batsheva Haart. And I would love to meet you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun.
And My Unorthodox Life is on Netflix. Everyone stream it if you haven't already. Thanks so much. And I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. For more celebrity interviews, subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard, please rate and review us, as any show of support you can give us would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at Gibsonoma on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow In The Know at In The Know on Twitter and at Watch In The Know on Instagram. We'll talk to you next time.